Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
What if your emotional life didn't have to feel like a constant reaction or a constant recovery? Welcome to the International Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic, a global online clinic offering psychotherapy, coaching, integrative well-being services, and mind-body practices, all in one place. At International Awareness Integration Institute, we don't just talk about change, we train it. Our work is guided by awareness integration theory, an evidence-based psychological and educational model designed to reduce anxiety and depression patterns, strengthen emotional regulation, and help you build a life that feels meaningful, steady, and fulfilling. Whether you're navigating stress, relationship strain, burnout, life transitions, trauma symptoms, or simply the feeling that you've outgrown your old life, you'll find a clear path forward here, supported by licensed professionals and expert practitioners. If you're ready to feel better, think clearer, and live fully, join the International Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic today. Visit awarenessintegration.com and book your first session or join our membership. Introducing a powerful new update from the Foojan app. Now with flexible subscription plans to fit your journey monthly, quarterly, or yearly. Our new AI-driven onboarding customizes your path to feeling better, faster, and enjoy a refreshed experience with stunning 3D interactive videos. Update now. Empower your inner voice with Foojan. Download today.
Psychologically, with you being a psychologist, fear-based leaders have a lot of dark triad psychology. And that means that they themselves are motivated by fear. When they're lying in bed at night, they're thinking, am I good enough? Will people ever like me? If they won't like me, will they at least fear me? And because fear is what motivates them, it's how they choose to motivate others.
Listen up if you want to promote your personal growth and self-awareness. I found the Foojan app last month and I have been absolutely loving it. I personally have never learned guided meditation, but thanks to this app, I now have learned incredible tools for my own stress relief and emotional self-awareness. Not to mention, there are self-evaluation tools and professional coaching available to utilize however your journey to self-discovery takes you. Join Foojan today and redefine your life one step at a time.
If you've been doing your best, but still feel stuck in anxiety, relationship stress, or the weight of old patterns, this is where things begin to shift. At the Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic, we offer something different. We provide two pathways forward. In psychotherapy, our licensed clinicians help heal unresolved trauma, reduce anxiety and depression, and navigate life transitions. In coaching, our certified coaches help you build confidence, leadership, and relationship mastery, turning insight into decisive action. Both are guided by Dr. Foojan Zain's evidence-based awareness integration theory, a structured roadmap from awareness to integration to action. During our summit, save 25% on all services from March 22nd through 29th. Visit awarenessintegration.com to book your first session or request to be matched with the right provider. Welcome to the Inner Voice, a Heartfelt Chat podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Foojan Zain. I'm a psychotherapist and author and the founder of the International Awareness Integration Institute. Today, I will be talking with Kate Lowry. She is a CEO coach, venture capitalist, and author based in Silicon Valley. She's an expert in fear-based leaders. Kate developed her methodology growing up in a fear-based family, and then refined her approach in the elite worlds of startups, private equity management consulting, and big tech at McKinsey, Meta, and Insight Partners. She is the author of Unbreakable, How to Thrive Under Fear-Based Leaders, which you can probably see around you and in some of the companies, in a lot of the companies where we're getting the fear-based leaders, authoritarian leaders, and they're getting a lot of advantage, but the people who work for them necessarily don't feel excited to be working for them. So we had an amazing conversation. I really loved her book. A lot of great techniques. She shares it with us in this podcast, and I hope that you learn as much as I have and enjoy it. Be sure to subscribe to my podcast, my YouTube channel, and connect with me through my website, foojanzain.com. Go to Foojan app and experience 31 areas and start getting fulfilled in every area of your life. I love to connect with you. Connect with me through my social media and share your thoughts with me. Love to hear from you. Now, without further ado, here's Kate Lowry. Yeah, sometimes the mind understands, but the body still holds the stress. That's why the International Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic offers mind-body services that help you regulate your nervous system, restore calm, and return to yourself physically, emotionally, and mentally. Our reflective practices include guided mindfulness, breath work, yoga, and grounding exercises, and specifically curated to support emotional regulation and physiological calm. Our somatic integration practices are a refined body-led approach where healing begins with presence, working with breath, sensation, posture, and gentle movement so resilience becomes felt, not forced. And for those who want deeper whole person support, we offer functional well-being guidance, addressing the interplay between hormonal balance, digestion, sleep architecture, and lifestyle factors with a root cause holistic framework. This is not self-care as a luxury. This is self-regulation as a life skill and a pathway to fulfillment. Choose the support your body and life have been asking for. Visit awarenessintegration.com to join a weekly meditation, explore somatic healing, breathwork, yoga-inspired movement, or functional medicine services, and start feeling the difference. It is so nice to have you on our show. Kate Lowry, everyone. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. You have written a book about, the name is Unbreakable, and it's how to thrive under fear-based leaders. As you shared, there's a lot more of the fear-based leaders that we're aware of. I can't say that there's more of them because I just think that's a lot of I could say in the work area, possibly the system could have been and used to be more of the authoritarian concepts. And I think that, in the industrial world, it kind of changed, but it's coming back for some reason. So we went into a little bit more of from a hierarchical place to a little bit more of a horizontal, a little bit more of compassionate. And then we're kind of seeing the rise of this type of leadership as if, it's enough compassion. We've got to get some work moving forward. And how we're going to do this is by enforcing, top to bottom level of language and a way of being. And somehow, Kate, I've also seen both growing, there's a system that grows that is promoting more of respect and compassion and diversity and how you talk. And then yet side by side, you're seeing this kind of fear-based leadership also rising. What are your thoughts about why and how come this is rising?
Yeah, definitely. So leadership styles go in and out of style, just like bell-bottom jeans. Mm-hmm. And just in the last few years, I have seen the largest shift in leadership style within the last couple of decades. We went from this, I'm going to be a self-aware, mature, thoughtful leader who's there for my employees or whoever it is, whether it's your churchgoers or your family or et cetera, to it's my way or the highway, get in line or get out. And that is taking a lot of people by surprise, and people are feeling really unprepared. And I think it's happening for several reasons. So first of all, in our media, we're seeing lots of these types of leaders, whether it's Game of Thrones, House of Cards, Billions, they all have these types of rigid, top down, almost like brute force types of leaders, although they can be more subtle and manipulative. And then across society, we're seeing a lot of people that many would consider role models act like this. So, we have people who are like your Elon Musk or, Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos getting their gym bro like makeovers. And when other people see that, they go, oh, well, if I don't have to be nice, that's a lot of work. I don't want to. It's kind of like saying, hey, you can choose the hard path, which is the mature path, the thoughtful path, or you can just grab whatever you want. And for a lot of people with poor impulse control, they want to grab whatever they want.
And what got you to want to write this book?
Definitely. So it was late, like early 2025, and I was working with my coaching clients who are mission-driven and underrepresented founders, and also talking to my peers in Silicon Valley, and people started spinning out. Some people were panicking, some people were freezing, some people were, having meltdowns, and I realized that most people don't know how to deal with leaders like this, but I do. I was raised in home with fear-based leaders, and I had 8 fear-based bosses in my career. And so I started writing a tactical guide for them, really to help them, compete on equal footing and help them stabilize and ground and find their way back to a world that felt less scary. Because most people are not used to being around people who lead with domination and force, especially not coming out of, the tech companies of the last 10 years.
And it becomes a fight. So if you are in a company where this is happening and you're not prepared in how to react or behave, let's say, then it does become either an internal fight, which the person says, I can't externally, I'm not powerful enough externally to have any type of dialogues, and they'll go in and they'll have their internal fight. They'll feel demeaned inside. And then yet they can't really, they want to keep their job and they don't know how to survive in the system, or they'll have an external kind of fight because constantly, and then they'll end up leaving. But if there's more of this way of leading, becoming custom. So obviously, even if you jump ship from one company to another, you might actually have to face all of this again. So thank you for creating a list of ways and skills that people can actually handle this. Now, in your book, you share about what is underlying this concept of the fear-based leader. Can you share a little bit the character, what's going on inside, and the reason that they have to show their power by force and by dominance versus by respect, let's say?
Absolutely. So you're right. It is becoming a from the frying pan into the fire situation. If you can leave an environment with a fear-based leader, you should. But that's getting harder and harder to do. And one of the reasons that people are struggling so much with this right now is because there is kind of a rash of insecure attachment driving people in society. And psychologically, with you being a psychologist, fear-based leaders have a lot of dark triad psychology. And that means that they themselves are motivated by fear. When they're lying in bed at night, they're thinking, am I good enough? Will people ever like me? If they won't like me, will they at least fear me? And because fear is what motivates them, it's how they choose to motivate others. They've missed a lot of what I call kindergarten lessons, which are, how do you build trust? How do you make friends? How do you apologize? And to people who don't know how to do that, it can be upsetting to interact with the world around them, and they just will start wanting to take whatever they want.
Yes. And it seems more that there is somehow a need for, let's say, adoration or admiration. But instead of and almost like internally not knowing how to get there, and they somehow get it by power and force. I do think, and I want your opinion. I do think that people strive toward power. So if someone appears to be powerful, people strive toward them. And could that also be a possibility of the person wanting to, fluff their feathers and show how powerful I am, and to capture admiration and adoration? And then when they're doing this and the admiration and adoration doesn't show up, then the wrath comes in, and it's like, well, then, you got to do it my way, and I will show you that how powerful I am. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, they are definitely very attention hungry, and they are not interested in equal attention. They don't want to give people attention back. They just want attention from them because they don't know how to self-soothe. And inside, they have a lot of emptiness that then they try to fill with external validation. And so when you get people like that, the problem is that people don't actually like being around powerful people who aren't very nice for very long. They might be drawn in by their status, their money, their power, but ultimately the fear-based leader has to find a way to control them, to make sure that they're subjugated in a way that secures their supply of attention. And so one of the first tactics I talk about in my book is called Starving the Dragon. And that's about modulating how much and what type of attention you give to these types of very needy people.
And because they're asking for admiration and adoration, I'm assuming, and I read it in your book, that part of another skill is to find some things in that person. And even if you don't want to be lying to yourself, but to at least find something that you could say favorably or positively to kind of stroke their ego, and they're not, you don't create an enemy within them.
Yeah, stroking their ego is actually a de-escalation technique because it reaffirms to them that you are putting them on a pedestal. And if they feel like they are securely above you, they're less likely to threaten you because really they need frequent affirmation that they're better than the people around them. And so sometimes you can stroke their ego in a way that gets them to engage more productively.
As you also said in your book, they are scoring you.
Yes.
So you can't just do this on a fake basis, because if you're just doing something on a fake basis, you're not going to be able to be consistent, and because they're also watching you and scoring you. So somehow finding something, even if it's one or two things that you can actually favor in their, in their behavior or their character, that might be a way of handling being close to them. Kate, there's also usually around this group, there are a couple of people who have learned the game, and they come up the ladder, not, being equal to them, because that you could never be, but come up to the ladder right underneath, and create this sense of a trusted circle right underneath this group. And then it becomes this hierarchical concept that they can be a buffer, or they can make the process worse. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in narcissism psychology, people call that flying monkeys, when you have people surrounding the wicked witch to do their bidding. And this happens a lot, where these types of people who are kind of morally bankrupt end up surrounded by sycophants who are similarly bankrupt. And so if you're going to be around a fear-based leader, you need to decide how you want to be judged and how you want to be categorized. You can choose to be seen as a useful tool, which means they're likely going to keep you around because they see value they can extract from you. You can be a sheep, people they classify as being non-entities, but that means that you're going to be chronically underestimated, and underestimated people often have a lot more freedom to execute things. Or you can become their cheerleader, where you're essentially their wing person. And the wing people often have a lot of power to ameliorate some of their worst tendencies. However, it's a particularly punishing role to be in because you're likely going to be asked to do a lot of distasteful things. And so each person has to kind of decide which of those three ways they want to play it. And you need to understand which one you're aiming for in your very first interaction. Because if there's anything that fear-based leaders are good at, they are extremely good at sizing people up. And once they judge you, they have no concept of self-growth themselves, so they assume you will stay the same forever.
Although it appears that this group are winning or gaining something internally, they're also living consistently with a hell of a lot of anxiety, because they also know that they can be thrown off the ladder with a kick at any time.
Yeah, they're very scared. And when you have people who are really scared, often that expresses as anger. So I often talk about anger being a surface emotion. Usually there's something underneath it that's driving it. It could be fear, it could be anxiety, it might be that you're really disappointed. But typically for powerful figures in society, it's not socially permissible for them to show fear. It's not socially permissible for them to show anxiety. And so if you ever see someone fly off the handle, maybe they knock all your papers off the table and yell at you in a meeting, what they may actually be saying is, I'm a fear-based leader and I'm really afraid. I'm afraid we're not going to perform this quarter. I'm afraid the board will oust me as CEO, or whatever that is.
How many percentages of the leaders, fear-based leaders, have you worked with or noticed that at one point they might get to say to themselves, maybe I need to change my leadership ways of being?
That's a really interesting question. So when I started my career, around 3 in 10 leaders that I worked with as a consultant or a coach had this type of style. More recently, it's been closer to about 7 in 10. Now, of the people that I have worked with who have this style, I would say between 10 and 15% eventually decide it's not worth it and try something else. But it's much, much more common for them to simply get rid of anyone who dissents or anyone who tries to speak truth to power around them, and then discard them, move on, and say, the problem is not with me, the problem is with them. Stop, 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 stop. Typically, I've only seen people really step back and examine their style when there is like a major disruption in their life. Their spouse leaves them, their COO quits, their kid goes no contact with them, whatever that big trigger is, they really have to be pushed or startled into re-examining, and most don't seek it out themselves.
I totally agree with you. That's exactly what I've also seen, that there has to be like the surrounding group that they trusted within, and this group kept telling them, you're the great king, and yes, you're the great king, and you're the one. When that group dissipates or creates a conflict, whether they're family members, like you said, or someone who's working for them, and then suddenly the whole kingdom kind of crumbles. And at the crumble, they'll either go in so much depression and they'll still be the victim, which they can't get out of. They'll just stay the victim, or they shift.
I have noticed that when they don't shift, when they become elderly, their lives are very lonely.
Yes.
I think that people often always think of these types of leaders in their prime, but because they're so deeply tied to their image and also so deeply insecure, aging hits them very hard. And as people age, they also tend to lose social power. And so I think that many people are like, oh, I wish this fear-based leader would get their comeuppance. And I'm usually like, well, wait until they're 70 and no one visits them in their nursing home.
Yes. And I'm going to ask a question. It's almost like a setup for failure for both of us, but I want to know, and hopefully you'll have an enlightening question. Is there anything that anyone around them can do that they could have a soft crash, not a hard crash, a soft crash and a soft landing into shifting their way in more creation of them being a little bit more secure inside, and shifting into respect and love versus a harsh way of just fear-based dominance?
Yeah, actually, and this is something I work with CEOs on in my coaching practice. So first of all, they need someone to practice safe attachment on. They need a safe space where no one is around them, where they can practice being different, practice role playing. How do you fire someone without being mean? Practice role playing, apologizing, talk about their fears and insecurities, and have it reflected back to them that, even though they feel very broken, the coach or therapist sees them as very whole. And then over time, building a relationship with themselves is very important. I know a lot of therapists like the artist's way, but I think it's really critical that these people who often have very strong inner critics learn to have an inner champion, someone who says, you know what? I failed yesterday, but today's a new day. I'm going to do better. Look at me. I'm trying something new. I should be proud of that. Let's go. Let's go. But they kind of need to hear an external voice saying those types of things, because in all reality, most of them grew up in homes where there was at least emotional neglect, often other types of abuse as well. And so they have to both be willing to take the leap and have someone who can hold space for them in a way that makes it safer for them to fail. Because if there's no safety to fail, they don't feel like they can try anything different.
Absolutely. To add to what beautifully you said is also sometimes is looking at their anxiety is always so high.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously they're afraid inside, and always looking for the adoration and admiration, that sometimes guiding them toward just seeking help to calm down their own anxiety. And based on that, sometimes it helps them move toward some sort of counseling, coaching, psychotherapy, where they begin learning to be more kinder to themselves, or creating inner power, where from that inner power they then shift the way that they deal with the world, and they'll seek for real connection. So that is also something that I've seen in addition with what you share.
Yeah, I think what can be especially helpful is having these types of leaders go through therapy with somatic modalities that helps expand their window of tolerance, while simultaneously doing things like DBT skills groups that teach distress tolerance and effective interpersonal communication. Because in reality, they need to know how not to be subsumed by their own emotions, and at the same time, be learning how to effectively relate to others.
So going now from the fear-based leaders to the group that you're also coaching in, let's say the survivors of the fear-based. Sometimes I've known people who've gotten so traumatized by working somewhere for a couple of years that it really affected their whole personality for years to come. So they really need a lot of healing. So it's how do I handle it when I'm there? How do I also handle it if I no longer want to be there and I'm out of the company, but I've experienced so much trauma that I'm now holding that type of a trauma moving forward to other people. I remember myself, I used to work in hospitals and in administration. I was the head of an outpatient hospital, and they had just hired someone to be the head of the hospital itself, which would be my boss. And this person came in from the first day and demanded that everyone had to have a meeting with them on their lunchtime. And, people were on shifts in hospitals, and then on the lunchtime, it says, it is what it is. You got to be here. And then the labor, obviously HR had to get involved, and I don't care. And this, for 3 months, everyone who was working in this wonderful hospital started changing their character. Everybody was anxious. Everybody was fearful. Everybody was afraid they're going to get fired. They could no longer share. And I remember that at one point in one meeting, I took a stand for the employees and said, they need to eat because their shift is going to start. And he started yelling at me in front of everybody. And everybody just startled in what it was. And I just walked out and I went to the HR and I said, this is inappropriate. And, he finally got fired. But he was able to get fired and not carry this because, the board accepted what it was. But for companies who founders are like this, for the companies who this is who they are, that doesn't happen. Like, you can't really fight that concept, right? And so the system of surviving, or going through a trauma healing after surviving becomes so important. So I know we kind of touched upon some of the key points that you shared about how to interact, how to kind of stay in a space where you could find your own boundaries, where you could find a way and a system, a method that you can work effectively, be true to yourself, and keep your job. So can you share a little bit about some of your techniques? I know you said a couple of them, but you have a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I talk about in my book is about how to build resilience. Because if you don't have resilience to draw from, you won't have the energy to implement new techniques. And so one of the first things I talk about is diversifying your sources of identity. If your only source of identity is that you are a nurse in a hospital, and then someone comes along and attacks that identity, it's almost like you're sitting on a stool with one leg and someone chops it off. You will fall over. And so people need to be cultivating many sources of identity that say, yes, I'm a nurse. I'm also a mother and an aunt and a cook and a gardener. And, I do ballroom dance and I am all of these things. And these make me me. And if someone takes away one thing, that's okay. I have 5 other legs to stand on. And so if you can make a list of all of the things that make you you and the different types of person you are, I think that's a good start. And then secondly, the way that you have to interact with fear-based leaders is markedly different. They operate on what I call like a different radio channel. If you're a good values-driven person, you're on AM and they're on FM. And so the first thing you have to learn is never tell them anything you actually care about at all, for any reason. Don't say, oh, I'm really looking forward to going to my kids' Little League game this weekend, because they will make you work through it. Don't tell them that you really want this one project and it's so important to you, because they'll cancel its funding. And so you have to play your cards close to your chest. And then, for example, when you're negotiating with them, give them things that they can cancel or throw away or crush or take away from you, and pretend to be really sad. Tell them 3 things you want funding for, emphasize the first 2, and they'll make you settle for the third, which is the thing you actually want. And when you're around them, I recommend that you try to gauge their emotional maturity level. So a lot of people don't realize that people's emotional ages are often very different than their physical age. And in my book, there's a chart that says, this is an emotional 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 15-year-old. And if you're dealing with an emotional 2-year-old, they're going to throw big tantrums in meetings. They're going to have a short attention span. You got to make sure that you bring snacks, give them lots of breaks, have things there to distract them. Because if you don't meet them where their emotional age is and you treat them like a rational adult, it will not end well for you. And so I think my book has something like 30 strategies in it, but you kind of get the sense that, oh, okay, like this is a different type of person. I'm going to have to meet them where they're at in a different way.
It's when I was reading your book and as I'm hearing you, it's almost like I have to be on guard all the time if I have a leader, a boss that is in that way. Sometimes there's also the culture of the company becomes that if top person holds that type of a attitude. So, it trickles down with the, what did you call that, monkeys around?
Yeah, the flying monkeys.
Right. So you could see this kind of trickles down. And I can see where there are people who their own strength and internal values creates a challenge out of this and says, let me see how I can learn these skills and stay and work through this. And the challenge could be just a psychological challenge. It's the thrill of winning a game, right? Let me figure out how to win this game, which is really hard. Or there's a financial security reason where regardless, you really don't have the option of hopping to somewhere else and you really have to stay in this company. And there are other people who their internal, whether it's value system or internal emotional system, it's not built for this, and they're not really enjoying the game, and they're not enjoying surviving the game. And so and so for those people, a lot more of the way they can handle it possibly is to find a way to leave, because staying could be more traumatizing than actually learning the game, and staying might be harsher than just choosing to go out. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you can choose to leave a fear-based organization, you should leave. Like, no holds barred. If you can find something better, go find it. My book is for people who are in industries, which is many industries right now, where they leave one type of toxic and go straight into another type of toxic. But it's all insecurity-driven toxic, even though it expresses differently, for example, in nonprofits versus for-profits and so on. And so this type of toolkit is really critical, because somewhere in your life, you are going to encounter someone who tries to abuse whatever type of power they have over you. Whether that's a doctor or a lawyer that you're interacting with, or your boss at work, there are going to be people that try to take advantage of power differentials. And it's really critical to know how to defend yourself. And so, like, you might say, yeah, I don't like learning this, but, I also don't like going to the dentist. Like, both are important to be, like, healthy and well. And once you learn some of the skills in the book, what I try to teach is how to step back and see a bigger picture, where I look at fear-based leaders and I go, wow, these are really stunted people. I really pity them. They don't know how to connect. They don't know how to authentically relate. They always seem to feel so alone. They have no real friends. And the reality is, once you start to pity someone, it's very hard for them to impact you, because you can go, wow, they just screamed at someone again. They really don't know how to be a person. And so I would encourage people to think about things that way, rather than letting someone, come along, scream at them, making them shake in their boots. If someone comes along and screams at you, that's not about you. Like, that's about them.
I used to work with someone who was in a particular industry, and the same thing happened. Like, the first year or so, they jumped from one company to another, but the same industry. And the industry was run almost, high level of corporates that there were international corporates that kind of run the same. And I think after about 10 years in 3 different companies, at one point he just said, I think I figured out the game. That in interview, this is what they say and do. And then in 3 months, this is how they behave to you. And then in your 1-year evaluation, they do this. And then in your 5, 10, and these are the games. And they try to rattle you at one point for you to quit. And if you don't quit and stay. And it was so interesting, because by the time he figured out the system, the next company he went to, now I think he's there for 27 years. And once in a while I hear from him and he says, hey, I'm figuring out the next level of the game, but I'm not buying into it anymore. And so kind of like figuring out, like what you were sharing, if I get to become aware of how this game works, then I could choose how to play in this game. And then I will feel the powerful inside. I will get the agency that I need to, versus thinking that I'm someone who might, somebody put a leash on me and they're yanking my leash at one point all the time, and I'm powerless against it. And this is what your book is sharing with people, how to become powerful within.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And I don't go through life playing games. Like, I don't think about things in win-loss mindsets. But if someone comes along and they try to play games with me, well, then if I'm not thinking about how to take strategic steps back, I'm just going to lose at every interaction in their eyes. And that's not the situation you want to be in. So learn how to play games for when you're stuck dealing with immature people who don't know how to live life in a normal way. And when you encounter it, know what to do. And the rest of the time, you be you.
Exactly. Everyone, Unbreakable, How to Thrive Under Fear-Based Leaders by Kate Lowry. Kate, anything we haven't shared that you really want people to know?
I want people to know that they're not alone right now. fear-based leaders want you to think that without them, you're powerless, you're alone, there's nothing you can do against them. And that's not true. The majority of people that I talk to these days are dealing with someone fear-based in their life. And so know that if you do learn the skills, it will help. And that the struggle is real. You're not imagining it. And it doesn't have to be this hard.
Do you have any hope that this trend that is happening will shift?
I think it will shift, but I think it's going to be a while. I think at least the next 5 years, we're going to see some of these power structures headed down their natural course. And right now, powerful people in society are being given an inch and taking 10 miles. And so once the guardrails come off, people do not like having them put back on. And so it's going to take some time for that to happen.
Where can people find you?
Of course. You can find me on Substack at katelowry.substack.com, on my website, katelowry.com, or on Instagram at Kate_Unbreakable_Lowry.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye.
Awareness, integration theory, certification programs. If you're a psychotherapist, clinician, or coach ready to elevate your impact, I invite you to become certified in the Awareness Integration Theory, AIT model. AIT is a structured, evidence-informed approach that strengthens emotional regulation, reduces anxiety and depression patterns, and helps clients create lasting change. Our training is practical, clear, and immediately usable in sessions, so you can work with more confidence and consistency. Join a global community of practitioners shaping the future of integrative mental health. Become AIT certified today. Visit awarenessintegration.com.